You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
Hey everybody, this is Mike Rotunda, also known as IRS, Erwin Shyster, formerly with WWF.
What's going on? It's your girl, Valentina Loca.
Hey everybody, this is Rip Studwell.
Hello everybody, it's Ethan Everhart.
What is up, wrestling world? This is the resident rock star of Impact Pro Wrestling, Adam Love.
This is Lars Metzger.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your golden boy, Bryce Jordan.
Woo! It's the Cornbell Cowboy.
The one called Manders, and you're listening to Shotgun Wrestling Radio.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Shotgun Wrestling Radio. I'm your host, Zach Takis, and we are continuing our Road to Hall of Fame weekend, which is just about a month away now. Now we're actually a little less than a month away, which is pretty exciting, and I'm excited and very honored to welcome in our next guest here. He is actually an award recipient at this year's George Traios Luthes Hall of Fame show. It's the Jack Brisco Spotlight Award, and it's very exciting to have one and the only Mr. Les Thatcher joining the show this week. Les, thank you for joining me, my friend. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing good, Zach, and thank you for having me on. And I don't know if anybody could be more excited about what's going to happen in Waterloo in July than I am. This has been 63 years coming. So, and the first time I was in Waterloo was 60 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I wrestled. Yeah, we was starting in the Kansas City territory, and the first day was Waterloo. So,
I'll say my age. I'm 36 years old. So by the time I was coming up as a wrestling fan, the territories were pretty much kind of long gone or kind of weeding their way out. And it's always something I've been fascinated by. I've been really fascinated with the territories. There's that book out there, The Death of the Territories, or whatever it is. And even reading that, it's just so interesting to me to see how the territory system worked back in the day.
Well, it was a great time. A whole different world. I believe the camaraderie was tighter because of the difference in, then the kayfabe was in vogue, obviously, heavily. And thank God. We won't go there. And so, it was like guys had to cover each other's back. You might be a baby face, but if the heel got buried in a crowd, it was your job to get him out of there without exposing the business. And it happened a few times, So, the camaraderie, and of course, we were in cars, right? The guys are lucky enough to do a lot of flying now. I say lucky, I'm not sure going through some of these airports with the crowds and stuff, whether that may be tougher than the match. But, the old story back then is we spent more time with each other than we did with our families. If you're driving a territory, there are times you might be away from home for 3 days. And over that 3 days, you've picked up 1,200 miles or more, so.
Yeah, well, and the thing with nowadays, too, it's a lot easier to, stay in touch with your families. Like, back then, you guys had to find a payphone to call and check up on somebody. And nowadays, we can, we're video chatting. Like, who would have thought this was a thing even 10 years ago?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a big, big difference. And, the shame of it is that more of the history of our industry isn't being pushed. There's nothing wrong with what's happening now. I don't, mean that shouldn't happen. But to me, as a former commentator, comparing something currently with history, right? This guy reminds me of, something, and educating the people to what happened before, because I realized some of the young fans, hell, some of the young wrestlers think Hulk Hogan invented the business, right? I mean, what, you mean there was wrestling before Hulk Hogan? Yes, there was. So,
now you mentioned commentating. I'm glad you did, because when I was listening to your podcast that you did with Brisco and Bradshaw a few weeks back, you had talked a lot about that. I've started dabbling commentary for some of our local promotions. You know, what would be, I guess, like your main advice for somebody like me or a young up and coming commentator about what, you know, kind of what to do or what they should be doing when it comes to commentary? Because it can be an easy job, but it can also be a very tough job, I think.
okay, the best thing to do is, and I'm not promoting for this company or anything, but as of 2 Saturday nights ago, probably the best commentary team in the industry currently is on Collision.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Nigel, Kevin Kelly, and when JR gets back, JR, and I make that statement having worked with all three, trained one of them. And so, yes, you know, and for a young commentator, you know, Joe Dombrowski.
Oh, I've heard the name. Yes.
Okay. Well, he's going to be in Waterloo.
Okay.
Yeah, he and I have done. Actually, the first time I heard Joe, he sent me an audio tape, right, and asked me to critique it. And I thought, damn, here's a young guy that's listened to some Gordon Soley, right? And so Joe is a guy that does a heck of a job. But to me, the main thing is realize you are a bridge between the audience and what's going on in the ring. And to me, the commentator's job is to enhance what's happening in the ring, cover mistakes if there are any, and there will be some, obviously, we're all human beings. But don't decide that you have to be the show. Don't decide that you have to be Bobby Heenan, because there isn't two, there was only one. Or Jerry Lawler, right? Or, you know, it's, you don't have to be funny. If you're a play-by-play guy, that's your job. If you're a color guy, it's to enhance the play-by-play guy. So, you know, and that's what I see too often is, I thought Bobby Heenan was cool. I'm going to be Bobby Heenan. No, you're not. You can play at it, but no, there was only one of them. But yeah, it's, you know, you have to be natural. And the other thing is, if you're going to sell what's in the ring, whether it's mediocre or top flight, then the people that are listening to you have to buy you as well. So you got to realize it's video. The people, or if it's live, the people see what's going on. So you can only enhance it so much. You can't make it better than it really is my point. Saying, oh, this guy's the greatest shape of his life, right? And he's not in any kind of shape. Or, you know, you can't, you have to realize they're watching, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard sometimes, you know, like somebody trying, and everybody in the building's on their feet, and you look behind and there's some old lady that's getting up going to the concession stand, right? But everybody else is sitting, not only sitting down, but on their hands, probably, right? So, you know, you have to be legitimately believable to the people who are listening to you, right? And that's the biggest thing. And I think that's what all of us back in the day, you know, Gordon, JR, Bob Cottle, Lance Russell, myself, you know, or most guys, Solely was the outline. He was, you know. When I first started the business, my first match, actually, my 63rd anniversary of that match will be July the 4th. And so Waterloo's coming at a good time. That's a good month for me. But yeah, you know, back then, a lot of times your commentator might have been the weatherman on that on a station, or the kiddie show host, right? So, and they're getting, I don't know, 25, 50 bucks, you know, whatever. And they're filling in. And they spend sometimes more time getting themselves over than the matches, right? I want to be clever. I want to be funny. It's not what you're getting paid to do, right? So when I first heard Gordon, I broke in 1960. I first heard Gordon in 1966. And I thought, wow, this is different, right? And that's who actually, I've always been a crazy about broadcasting, right? Always thought I wanted to be a DJ, like Wolfman Jack or Dr. Johnny Fever.
I can relate to that.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, but yeah, solely I thought, wow, he's selling this seriously, right? He's not trying to get himself over. He's covering, what's going on in the ring. And then Gordon and I became friends, not only about wrestling, about racing. I was driving a drag strip before I ever had a driver's license. He was announcer and part owner of Golden Gate Speedway in St. Petersburg. And so, we bonded off of that as well. But then I got the opportunity to work with him in 73 and 74 in Atlanta. But that's, working with somebody that you can pick things up from. And I've said many times, I feel like I've worked with the Mount Rushmore of broadcasters in our business. Ross, Soley, Russell, Cottle, Charlie Platt, who you probably never even heard of, but Charlie is out of Dothan, Alabama. He did Southeastern wrestling. And when Ron Fuller had the territory here in Knoxville, as well as down there, I got a chance to work with Charlie. Charlie's in a small market, so a lot of people know who's Charlie Platt. He was good too. But that's the thing. It's, it's got, some of it's got to rub off, right. if you're paying attention. And that's the way I feel. Why am I going to be in Waterloo? Because I was blessed to come on the scene at a time when was probably the golden age of wrestling.
Yeah.
Great bookers, great workers, great commentators. So yeah, it was hard not to be decent, if maybe good,
Well, and the one thing that I was told when I very first started, I'll never forget the first night I did it. There's a company here in Iowa called Central Empire Wrestling, and one of my friends promoters, and I did it, and he was like, the biggest thing I can tell you is call what you see in the ring. And I was like, you know what? I never thought about that. Just call what you see, because he's like, people don't want to hear what you had for breakfast or what happened in the football game this past week. And I'm like,
only if it fits in.
Right.
Hey, that reminds me of, along those lines. But yeah, and sometimes you have to cover.
Yep.
Now, if I saw a guy throw a drop kick and whoever was on the receiving end started to bump too quick and there was no contact, right? If I saw it on the monitor, you saw it at home. Wow. So-and-so saw that drop kick coming, and in his haste to get out of the way, lost his balance and went down. Now, did I save the day? Probably not, but it made sense.
Yep.
And there's a reason, because somebody in that's watching it at home, or they're going to say, he missed that drop kick and the guy fell down. Okay, I just gave him a reason for that, right?
Right.
So that's part of your job too.
Now, one of the things I also want to bring up here too, I know you've actually trained somebody who's very familiar with Iowa, and I know who who I'm probably going to mention here. But I know you also trained our good old friend Rory Fox, who I've had on the show many.
Oh, that crazy
times.
kid!
Yeah. What are some of your memories of working with Rory back in the day when he was first coming up? Because I know when I was talking to Troy Peterson last week, he said Rory's going to be in Waterloo this year too. So.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad Roy. Roy had planned to come anyway. I think
Yeah. He's usually always there, whether he's booked or not. So.
Yeah. You know what? That's there's a case of being in the right place at the right time. When I was contacted by MTV about doing that series, right? Sure, I was interested. So we need a kid that's fresh. I said, I just had a young man come in from Iowa who has just been here a week or so. Is there anybody that's coming in? They wanted somebody to follow in, and we can talk about that a little bit too, because I know everybody thinks reality series aren't real, right?
Right.
Well, I can vouch for our part of that series. But anyway, we came up with a kid from Chicago. Have you seen the series?
Oh yeah, that was one of my favorite episodes growing up as a kid, because I felt like for me, when that episode released, it was kind of my first look at like kind of behind the scenes of wrestling, and it's like, oh, there is a different world besides WWF or WCW, because at the time we didn't have like 5 different promotions in Iowa, so that was kind of my first like behind the scenes look of professional wrestling. So yeah, I absolutely loved it.
The crazy thing is MTV had approached a couple other wrestling schools, and they want to know how much you're going to pay me. And I've been around long enough to know when they said, we're going to feature you in a series on MTV. I thought, pay me, just getting the exposure worldwide on MTV. I couldn't afford to buy that if I sold my house, my car, and my family. Right.
Well, especially at that time, MTV was just blowing up all over the place. I mean,
sure.
Yeah, you couldn't have made a better decision there.
Monday Night Wars and the whole nine yards. Yeah, exactly. So, and the deal was, I told him about the kid in Chicago. You've seen the series, so you know what a jerk he ended up being. But the thing was, he came down for a weekend to visit, right, before he decided to come back and train. And he wasn't that way at all. He got along with everybody. None of us knew that he had washed out of fireman's school and God knows what else, right? Had been in drug rehab twice.
Right.
Again, we didn't know. But so as you saw, they actually were his home in Chicago, and they made the drive down with it, right? The camera crew.
Yeah.
Everybody. Yeah. So they stopped on the outskirts of Cincy and called me and said, I'm sending my lighting guy and my sound guy in to set up your office. We're not bringing this. We want to video him walking in the door for the first time, sitting down, and you indoctrinating him. So everything, and that was through this whole thing, I was told, you do what you do, and we'll pick up on it. So of course the kid voiced out. I mean, there's a whole series, a crazy TV series of its own. But Rory, he was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
So when they saw, my God, he needed to go back to rehab again. And so Rory, I said, hey, the kid that I mentioned initially, here he is, let's go. So we went right off. It was seamless, and Roy turned into a damn good worker.
Yeah.
But like every kid, he wanted to do these moves that if you were Arnold Schwarzenegger, you did, not if you were a normal size, like cruiserweight, right? And so Rory, you're not Hulk Hogan, change a little bit. But yeah, it's fine, but yeah, he popped. I'll tell you, he was his first night was we had put him in a tag. I was accused of keeping guys in too long. He doesn't put them out fast. No, I didn't, and don't want to. And tell you why. I don't want to put a guy in the ring and have a sign across it that says I'm green and don't know what I'm doing here, right? And be nervous, because it can affect those guys in the long run. But more importantly, it affects your show. If the people realize this guy's, doesn't know what the hell he's doing. So I want to be sure a guy is going to be comfortable, but I also want to be sure he's with people in the ring that can carry him if he gets nervous or loses,
Sure.
What do we do next? That sort of thing. So anyway, he was in a tag match. And at the end of the show, a lady named Phyllis Lee, who was a manager of Dan Severin, and it helped Boris Malenko, Larry Simon, train wrestlers, right? And she had come down. She lived up in Toledo at the time. And she had come down. We were talking after the show. And she said, hey, the kid's pretty good. How long's he been working? I said, tonight was his first match. Oh, no, it wasn't. I said, thank you. That's the point. You see where I'm going with that? So yeah, that's.
And I'll tell you, I don't know when the last time you watched him wrestle, but there was a few years back when, again, with Central Empire Wrestling, they were building a really great story between him and another guy by the name of Storm Thomas, and the amount of heat that Rory could get from the town of Oskaloosa, Iowa, was something I've never seen before. He just came out and, oh my God, the building would just erupt in boos, and it was just something I've never seen before. I don't feel like I've seen since, but the way he could just get a crowd to turn on him is just like, yeah, it's something fun to watch. And again, going back to that series, like when I was a kid, I lived in Cedar Rapids. So growing up as a kid from Cedar Rapids, it's like, oh shoot, that dude's from Cedar Rapids. So it's like that was also really kind of a cool, thing for us to have one of Iowa's own like on a national stage. And then fast forward like I think it was 2005 or 6, I actually finally met Roy when he started kind of coming back to the Iowa independent scene, and was able to finally meet him and get to know him a little bit more. So yeah, that was always kind of cool for me.
Yeah, he's a great guy. In fact, when he's sent me an email when Joel had signed him for the Battle Royal, right? So I said, don't be late for practice either. That's a running joke between he and I, right? Because if you showed up late for training, we had a series of warm-up drills we went through, right? So if you walked in 5 minutes late and we were 5 minutes into these drills, everybody stop. We're waiting for Zach now to get ready because we're going to start all over again. You just didn't have my butt on you. You had 15 or 20 other guys saying, listen, jackass, right? Show up on time, right? But, that's, and we're part of this joke. The guy that was the MTV guy from Chicago, right? Okay. He had asked Rory to ride him downtown to go to a bank, something to do with that. He couldn't go to a branch. I don't know what it was. Needed to go to this bank downtown Cincinnati. Rory said, okay, I want to help. I'll take you down there. So they find this bank, and the kid says, Rory says, well, I'll try. No, just park on down. So Rory parks like a block away or something, right? I'll be right back. So the kid takes off, goes back. Roy's sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting. And then he realizes damn bank's closed, right? It's after 5 o'clock and training starts at 6.
Uh-oh.
So knowing my temperament about things like that, he found the nearest payphone he could, right? And called, oh my God, I brought him downtown. I can't find him, but I'm going to be late. I'm sorry. I'll be there as quick as I can, right? So when I said to him in the email, and don't be late for practice, that's...
No, I don't have a whole lot of time because my recording only lasts for like about a half an hour here. But the real reason, again, we have you on is to help promote the George Trails Luthes Hall of Fame weekend coming up, and you're being honored with the Jack Brisco Spotlight Award. And I know you have a long history with the Briscoes, so what does it mean for you to receive this recognition, for especially it being the first time that they're doing this award? What does this recognition mean for you?
I am overly overwhelmed, proud, humbled, honored. I mean, and yes, I found out about this almost 2 months ago, but it's just now sinking in, right? Wow, I'm going in the Hall of Fame. How'd that happen? Right? But yeah, well, yeah, and having Gerald making the presentation and having Jack's name on it is just icing on the cake, because both of them been close friends, and we started the wrestling t-shirt business. Did you know that?
Very nice.
Yeah, and that's true. And we will have some of those shirts, or not the old shirts that we started with, but some at the Hall of Fame in next month. And Joe Dombrowski is going to. He and I did. You ever heard of the Pillman Memorial shows that I did?
Oh yeah, yep, absolutely,
okay.
Yep.
There's all 4 of those shows complete with extras and interviews of the guys that were on the shows. Joe and I doing more of the voiceover on it, but there's a Pillman, the anthology, all 4 of them, the 20th anniversary of that show, those group of shows. And then we've got Wrestling from the Heartland, the Lost Developmental Tapes, volumes 1, 2, and 3, which will also be on sale there. Those are all 2-disc sets, and the Pillman is a 4-disc set with over 15 hours of content. Yeah, but anyway, yeah. So, wow, we started T-shirts. I had thought t-shirts first got red hot for everybody in the 60s, right? I mean, if you were protesting something or a rock band or whatever, t-shirts. So, and then you start seeing them pop up, you know, with other sporting events. So I had mentioned to a couple prominent promoters, I had this idea. I thought t-shirts, you know, maybe just the baby faces, obviously, you can't do the heels. And they weren't down on it, but they weren't interested, right? We're promoting wrestling. Okay. So Jack and Jerry and I were sitting around Jerry's apartment one night, having a few beers and maybe a few other things, I'm not sure. But and just talking in general, you know, not about business or wrestling. And I brought up my frustration with it, you know, and I said, I just think it's a good idea. And I can hear, have you ever talked to Jack?
No, I have not. No.
Well, I can't do that voice, but his voice is even lower than mine. But I hear him saying, well, hell, why don't we do it? I said, we? He said, the three of us, we'll all throw the money in and we'll do t-shirts. So Jack was on the road. He was going back to Florida. And so we found a printer, a silk screen printer in Charlotte. And of course, the Carolinas has cotton mills all over the friggin' place. You can get t-shirts at every street corner. So, you know, found a dealer for t-shirts and everything. So, and Jerry Lawler, who was just getting his feet wet as a, you know, did the pen and ink drawing for it for the exorbitant price of $25. I wish I had that original drawing now because God knows what it might be worth.
No kidding.
Brisco Booster was the name of the t-shirt with pen and ink drawing of Jack and Jerry, right? And you could have any color you wanted as long as it was white, because that's all we had, white. We sold them for $3.50 a piece. And we didn't know how they'd go either, right?
Right.
And, well, I was on with Jerry and JBL too a couple of months ago, and we were talking about it. And we piled a bunch of them in the car. We were wrestling in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I also said that night that I said to Mike Mooneyham, who's doing a series on me about the Hall of Fame, I said, we may have invented the gimmick table, you know, because back then there were no gimmick. I mean, we all had black and white 8x10s that we would sell for $1 a piece, but you give those to some kid or fan that you knew was in that building all the time, and they would, and you know, you buy them lunch or dinner or something, or give them $5 or something. They sold you pictures. But here we are with these arms loaded t-shirt, and we damn sure can't carry them around with us, right? So we asked the people in Fayetteville for a table. And you've heard the story about such and such flying off the shelves with a great. We were both insane. I mean, they were lined up and it was going left and right. Well, we're onto something. But not being entrepreneurs or big businessmen, we were wrestlers, right? And all of us still in the midst of our careers. And so we never thought about the profit margin and all that. But then Gerald and I started taking them around the territory in the Carolinas, right? And but we found like Norfolk, the Scope Coliseum, wanted 40%. We wouldn't have that kind. So we didn't bother with those guys, right? But anyway, so people started to notice, damn, these t-shirts are selling pretty decent, right? So now the promoters want a piece. And the buildings want a piece, right? So anyway, we ended up, my dad, God love him, great carpenter, I mean, handyman and everything. He built a series of storage space out in the garage at Cincinnati, our home. And we took, because I'd gone to, I mentioned working with Soley, part of that 73 and 74, I was in Atlanta. So guess what? I had to get a 2-bedroom apartment. Why? 1 bedroom for the t-shirts, 1 bedroom for me, right? And I said, wait a minute, guys, I'm not hauling these t-shirts all over the United States for the next number of years. So my dad, you know, so we went to mail order, and we got like Norm Pietzer's wrestling news. I'd write some columns and change. He'd put an ad in for us. We had an ad in the Charlotte program, Atlanta and Tampa. But then the promote, like I say, everybody wanted a piece of the action. So we got rid of the ones we had. And we tried some with Bill Watts and Thunderbolt Patterson. But again, it just didn't. And I said to Gerald, I've said to Gerald a couple of times, wouldn't it be great, since we were the inventors of wrestling T-shirts. If now we could just get 1% of the net of all the T-shirts sold, where would we build the castles, right? I mean, can you imagine what 1% of the gross T-shirts, wrestling T-shirt sales for 1 year in this country would be?
Wow. Yeah, I can only begin to fathom.
But yeah, so this award with Jack's name on it, and Gerald, it's family, you know, and I couldn't be more honored to have him introduce me or to have Jack's name, you know, attached to it. And the other thing I think about, I've never been to the hall, right?
I was just gonna ask you if you've been to the Hall of Fame or the museum itself.
Can I tell you something, to be honest? And please don't think I'm an egomaniac, because I'm not. And several people have asked me about, well, the one that used to be in Texas but has been closed, right?
Yeah.
And Ben, I said, I'm going when I get inducted. So I'm going, right?
I tell you what, you'll love it. It's a great mixture of amateur, and they have a really beautiful professional wing. And the great thing I love about the weekend is it's all within like a 2-block radius. So you park at the hotel, there's a convention center, then like a block away is the actual museum. So it's
staying at the Best Western.
Yes.
Is that close by?
Yeah. Like I said, it's all connected. The Best Western is connected with the convention center, so everything's all just within, like I said, walking distance. And
that's great. That's great.
It's super convenient, and I think you're gonna have a lot of fun. It's a fun weekend. Like I said, Thursday night they do. Thursday night they do trivia.
The thing to me is, I say I want to walk the whole Hall of Fame. Yeah. To think, okay, Lou Thez, his name is on that Hall of Fame, and Lou was my color man when I did play-by-play for Mario Savoldi's promotion up in New England back in the late 80s, right? And it's J.J. Dillon, who was my tag team partner before he became a heel and a manager, right? In fact, he pulled my coattail some, and he will tell you that.
And he'll be there this year too.
So many of my peers are there, but yet there's people like Ed Strangler Lewis, Gotch, that I read books about. Sure. And to think that I'm going to be a part of that is overwhelming, to be quite honest. I said to my grandson, I said, I don't care if they just put a picture of me in the men's room. I will still be in that brick and mortar place with the people I have bought tickets to see, people I've wrestled, people that I've only read about, and I'm blown away by it. I'll be honest with you. You know, I'm excited, and I've been thinking, what am I going to say? I don't have a clue. I mean, you realize part of my induction is because I run my mouth, right? I know how to talk. I've made notes and throw them away. I have nothing. I think I'm going to try to ad lib it, but how do you cover 63 years and all these different categories in like 3 or 4 minutes? I don't know. Right? I am not that talented, believe me, but I love the business. It's my life. I mean, it's who I am. It's what I do. And, you know, you think about when I broke in years ago at age 19, sure, everybody wants to be world champion, right? Then you realize that maybe that's not your place, but you're a contender, you're this or that. Hall of Fame never came to my mind until just recent times, right? And thinking, I think, well, and one of the reasons I mentioned JJ, we talked about his inductions one time, right? And he said, well, you know, I don't think any one thing I did, maybe it would warrant it, but my collective body of work. And that's what I said, my collective body of work isn't too bad either. So maybe, but when I got the call, it was, and I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, the one thing about the guys from our generation, we may not see each other for 10 years, but I'll walk up to somebody I haven't seen in 10 years in Waterloo, and it will start like we saw each other yesterday, because realize we can have a next door neighbor who's a great person, and we might play softball we can't talk about our business with them because they won't understand what the hell we're talking about, right? They'll say, what's he, crazy? What's he talking? You know, I mean, we're a special breed, whether that's good or bad, I'm not sure. But you know, and so I'm just looking forward to everything and looking forward to meeting you. And you ought to be sure I introduce you to Joe Dombrowski.
We'll do for
you
sure.
Would appreciate him.
I only got a couple more minutes here with you, and again, thank you for taking the time to be with me. That's going to do it for us here on this edition of Shotgun Wrestling Radio. Again, you can see Les in Waterloo next month. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's hard to believe it's already getting time. And Les, thank you again very much for joining us. Everybody, that's going to do it for us here on this edition of Shotgun Wrestling Radio.
Thank you for having me, my friend. Look forward to seeing you in Waterloo in just a few weeks.
Absolutely. And everybody, that's going to do it for us here this week. Till next time, we'll see you on the World Wide Web.